So if you're already familiar in sensing energy, or when you are able to do so, there are some hand techniques that we can bring in to simply feel and gauge where our dog's energy field is and how we can feel and where we can feel that energy field. And then how we can bring in some simple movements, some very, very ancient healing, some ancient techniques by simply using our hands that are going to provide support for our dogs. Now, before I show these to you, I'm just going to show you a video of me working with Tunkasila. Tunkasila and I have not long come back in from a walk, and unfortunately we bumped into a jogger who had 2 dogs off lead. Now, you already know about Tunkasila and the trauma that she has had when you've listened to the trauma section. Tunkasila's body is very sensitive to adrenaline. She also struggles to cope in situations where she's around dogs and also people that she doesn't know. I'm very careful in where I walk Tunkasila, and normally on the walks that I take her on, we very, very rarely see people, and it just so happened that on this particular day that we did. So I'm focusing on getting her home, focusing on myself, and actually focusing on supporting and realigning her energy systems so that the shock and the trauma and the fear that she felt that moment in time is dissipated rather than stored within her body that may cause other disturbances within her ecosystem. And one of the things that I'm focusing on right now are what are called shock points. There are different shock points on our dogs, but 2 that I focus on is the tips of the ears. And as we see in this video, Tunkasila isn't so keen for those shock points to be held. But our dogs also have other shock points, and they are the center of the pads, both on the front of the feet and the back foot. Now, what is really interesting in this video for me is that given Tunkasila's functional character and who she is as an individual, she really quite struggles to have her feet held on a regular basis. But actually on this video, when I go to the shock points, just watch what she does. It's a really happy moment for me. When we've got a reactive dog and they're in that state where their nervous system becomes so energized and so irritated, we're then looking at how we can bring those energy systems back into neutral. So first of all, it's very important for me to focus on myself and do breath work, because equally my nervous system gets irritated at that point. My adrenaline starts to kick in. So just going to do a series of breathing. Just to calm my energy system down. And then there's lots of different hands-on work we can do within the energy field. Now these were taught to me by a teacher of mine, a good friend, a lovely lady called Madison King. She's an amazing lady. And I'm going to be working on just bringing down her triple warmer, her triple heater, and just working on some touch work. So I'm going to go to some shock points, see if she wants them. So it's all based on if she wants them. Just at the tips of the ears. Good girl. So good shock points to calm down the system. There's also another shock point at the back of the pad, so she's happy with that. Now actually Tunkasila generally doesn't like her feet being touched, so I'm just going to hold that for a bit and she'll tell me when she's had enough. Yeah, you doing good? Yeah, okay. Good girl, nice, well done. And then just some nice figure of eights down the body. Working on that flight and fight response of bringing that nervous system back down into balance. So of course Tunkasila is my dog. I know how delicate and how sensitive she can be around having her paws held. So in this video, when I'm holding those shock points, and I'm not pinching them, I'm just simply applying a little bit of pressure into that back pad, how she so beautifully relaxes down into that as a way of that shock being released from her system is so poignant and so important for me. Because normally she can be sensitive in having her paws touched. Whereas in this video, I hold those paws, she relaxes down. It's a really, really important bit of video for me, and I love the response that she showed. So in the previous video, you started to see me to do a hand movement, almost like the figure of eights or the infinity sign. Again, when we're able to sense energy and using our hands as a form of healing, this is a really important, simple and basic hand technique that we can use, but it's very, very ancient. It's a very ancient symbol and is a very ancient form of healing that indigenous cultures have used for thousands of years. The pattern and the shape is really basic, but the pattern and shape is reflective of the shape of DNA, this beautiful figure of 8 or this beautiful spiral. And what indigenous cultures have known, and why indigenous cultures have been using this for thousands of years, is it forms the pattern and the shape of DNA. And itself is very, very healing. Through biophoton research, we do know that DNA in every living being is able to emit very, very low level frequency and vibrancy to other life forms. By understanding and focusing on the shape and bringing the shape into a dog's energy field, certainly what I see and what I experience is that this supports a dog's ecosystem. It can really provide healing for emotional states, and it can also provide healing at physical levels. Now, we are not doing this instead of veterinary care. We're doing this as a supportive form of healing. So if we have a dog that is recovering from an operation, a dog that has a wound, simply by focusing on this area and this localized area and putting very small figure of 8s or very small, what are known as cosmic serpents, into this area. So if a dog has had an operation or the dog has got a wound or even has hurt itself internally, if we focus on that localized area and start to repeat the shape, it actually brings healing. It brings healing within the energy system that supports the dog physically, it supports the dog emotionally. So we can always start with this pattern of figure of 8 or this infinity sign. And even if we have a dog that hasn't got any known emotional imbalances or physical imbalances, it's something that I really promote you to bring in as part of your daily therapy for your dog. When your working day is done and you're sat with your dog on an evening, or even if you work with dogs, simply be present, be at rest with them, and just bring in this figure of 8 and see how the dog responds. Again, remember the dog can choose, or the dog should have opportunity to choose. If the dog doesn't want it, then the dog can walk away. If the dog does want it, then the dog can stay with you and enjoy that form of healing for as long as they would like it for. What we can do is move from the natural figure of 8s to then working with our hands separately. Like I said in that video, left hand takes energy out. If we move our right hand clockwise, that is putting new energy in. Now these are just some really basic hand movements that I'm giving you. There are some that are more advanced, but I just want you to give you 3 of the key basic hand movements that you can work with today to offer your dog, see how your dogs respond. But I guarantee your dog is going to get so much support from just 3 simple hand techniques. Figure of 8s, either throughout the body or in a particular localized area. Left hand anti-clockwise, which takes energy out, and right hand clockwise, that puts new energy in. Now, many people think that if their dog is in pain, they're mainly going to want energy taken out, because where there is pain, there's inflammation. And certainly try it, because your dog is going to be very obvious and when they want it and when they've had enough. And what you can do is work with all 3 to understand what your dog wants and what your dog prefers. And again, this will change on a daily basis as well. Sometimes my dogs want figure of 8s, sometimes they want left hand anti-clockwise, sometimes they want new energy put in with my right hand clockwise. But remember, this is a therapy. So again, we have to be present, we have to be calm, we have to be balanced, and it's methodical. So there is a pattern and a movement and a rhythm to it. Equally, if a dog is in pain, had an operation or has a wound or a cut or anything like that, then again, an area where there's inflammation, we can assume that the dog simply wants energy taken out from its body. But don't always assume that, because also a dog might want the right hand clockwise movement. So you can play around with this with your own dogs and those dogs that you work with, because the dog will be quick to politely tell you and to communicate with you of what they want, when they want it, and when they've had enough. But again, I really encourage you to bring these hand movements and these healing techniques into your dogs. At the moment, we're looking at these techniques that support our dog's energy systems on a daily basis. They work by realigning our dog's energy systems. Remember, if we're not providing these therapies on a daily basis, we run the risk of our dog's energy system depleting further and further and further. If we lower a dog's wellness if we lower a dog's health, then that dog is equally losing frequency, it's losing energy, and that is running the risk of further disturbances and further imbalances occurring within our dog. So for now, we have the ability to sense energy, the importance of us being present, the understanding of entrainment and how our biochemistry and our emotional state can affect our dogs. We have the simple being present with our dogs, being at rest with them, being calm, offering those supportive nurturing tools of warmth and trust and breath. The importance of touch, but not necessarily giving physical touch, but working within the dog's energy system and energy field and how we can sense that. And then bringing in not just the smudging, but also figure of eights, left hand anti-clockwise and right hand clockwise. If we have identified an area in a dog's body that needs some support, whether that is through sensing, whether we've tested, or whether we've used a pendulum, there are also other techniques that we can bring in. So I'm not qualified in working with crystals, but there are certain crystals that I work with to support our dog's energy system. And one of them you're going to see in this video. Now, for those of you that understand energy centers in ourselves, in our dogs and all animals, what I love in this video is you can see the ray of the sun shining directly on the dog's crown center. But I'm using a clear-cut crystal as a form of healing, as a way that light can penetrate that crystal to bring in all colors of the spectrum that provide different healing themselves. Because the reason why we can see different colors is because they emit a different frequency. They emit a different vibration that can also be used in healing in itself. Again, in the video, the dog has choice. The dog can choose to move away or the dog can choose to stay. So there are other little tools that we can bring in to support the healing that we're doing, first and foremost by just concentrating on the dog's body with our hands, and now starting to bring in some other equipment and tools that can support the work that we already have been doing.